Tycoon returns with Mistress, finds ex-wife and triplets fighting for fortune. It was a rainy evening in the outskirts of Seoul, the kind of soft drizzle that clung to the windows and blurred the city lights in the distance. In a modest rooftop apartment, the soft hum of a kettle was the only sound that echoed through the small kitchen. She stood there, her hands gently cradling a chipped mug as steam rose from the cup. Her name was Yoon R.A., and this was the life she had chosen, or rather, the life she had been left with. But it hadn't always been like this. 8 years ago, R.A. had been filled with hope, love, and an unshakable belief in the man she had married. Kang Ji-hoon, a young, ambitious man from a humble background like hers, had dreamed of becoming a tycoon. He was bold, determined, and driven. But unlike others she had known, he hadn't been cold or calculating. He had a warm laugh, eyes that lit up when he talked about the future, and a deep, sincere way of saying, "I will make the world ours, R.A." They had met in university, two scholarship students who often skipped meals to afford books, but who shared one bowl of ramen like it was a feast. They had fallen in love not through grand gestures, but through the quiet sacrifices, through late nights at libraries and part-time jobs. He used to walk her home every night, no matter how tired he was, holding her hand like she was the anchor keeping him steady in a storm. One night, on a rooftop much like the one she lived in now, he knelt with a tiny silver ring. It wasn't expensive, but it was all he had, and said, "Marry me not for what I can give you, but for what I promised to become for you." And she did. They married in the spring. No wedding hall, no guests in silk gowns. Just them, a few friends, and promises whispered under a cherry blossom tree. She remembered the way he looked at her, the way he said, "I'll protect your smile with everything I have." R.A. believed him. In the early days, they had nothing but love and shared dreams. She supported him through every failed pitch, every business rejection. She worked double shifts at the hospital while he studied contracts and wrote proposals through the night. They didn't sleep much, but they laughed. They lived on instant noodles and hope. And then, finally, the breakthrough came. Ji-hoon's small tech idea got funded. One investor turned into two. The product launched. Success arrived like a tidal wave. Suddenly, they had more money than they'd ever imagined. Luxury cars, penthouses, invitations to elite events. He started wearing suits tailored in Europe. He flew to Dubai, Singapore, New York. But with every step he took toward that world, he took one step away from her. First, she tried to understand. "He's building our future," she'd say to herself as she sat alone at the dinner table, his soup growing cold. But months passed, and dinners turned into silences. Messages left unread. Birthdays forgotten. One night, she waited up with candles lit and his favorite dish cooked. Kimchi stew, the one she used to make him during exam weeks. He came home at 2 a.m., smelling of expensive perfume and smiling like a stranger. "You're still up?" he asked, voice distant. "I made your favorite," she said softly. He looked at the table, then at her. "All right, don't wait up anymore. I eat out with clients now. It's part of the job." She didn't reply. She just nodded and quietly blew out the candle. And then came her, Cha Yoon-hee, a marketing executive with a gleaming family name and a father who owned 3 hotels. She was everything R.A. wasn't. Elegant, connected, and part of the world Ji-hoon now belonged to. At first, R.A. didn't want to believe the whispers. She told herself, "He's just working late. He's tired." But one day, as she cleaned out his jacket before sending it to the dry cleaners, she found a receipt for a weekend stay at a 5-star resort. For 2. When she confronted him, her voice trembled. "Ji-hoon, who is she?" He didn't lie. He didn't even look ashamed. He just sighed and sat down. "R.A., you don't understand this world. I have to be with someone who fits it." She stood there, eyes wide, hands shaking. "But I was there before the world knew your name. I held your hand through every failure. I believed in you when no one else did." "You believed in a dream," he said quietly. "But I woke up." That night he packed his things. Not even an argument. Not a tear. Just a man walking out as if love were a phase, a temporary arrangement. He didn't ask if she had eaten. He didn't notice the quiet sob that broke her as the door closed behind him. A week later, she found out she was pregnant. She called him once. Just once. He didn't pick up. She left a voice message, her tone calm but broken. "Jihoon, I just wanted to say I'm pregnant. It's yours. That's all." He never replied. She waited. A day. A week. A month. Nothing. And so RA made a decision. She would raise the baby or whatever life grew inside her on her own. She sold her wedding ring to pay for the hospital bills. She moved into a cheaper place. And then, at 7 months, doctors told her the shock and stress had caused complications. She would be having triplets. That night, alone in a hospital room with machines beeping, she touched her swollen belly and whispered, "I don't need your father's name. I will give you mine. I'll give you everything I have, even if it's only love." She named them Minjun, Haun, and Jisoo, each name chosen with hope and strength. 3 souls born of heartbreak, but destined for more. As they grew, she told them bedtime stories of a father who had once dreamed of changing the world, but never mentioned his face. She taught them to work hard, to protect each other, to value kindness over wealth. They lived simply, but they laughed. Oh, how they laughed. They shared umbrellas on rainy days, hot chocolate in paper cups, and dreams whispered in. Small voices as they huddled together on the futon. RA never looked back. She had nothing from the past except memories, and 3 reasons to fight for the future. And somewhere far away, in a glittering glass tower, Kang Ji-hoon stood beside his elegant new wife, sipping champagne and smiling for the cameras. But even as the flashbulbs lit up their world, a small part of him, the part he never let anyone see, wondered what became of the girl who once gave him everything when he had nothing. He didn't know he would soon find out, and when he did, it would shake everything he thought he had won. Você diz. Certo? Agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como seu faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoco. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT diz. The years passed slowly for RA, not because time dragged, but because every day required strength she didn't know she had. Raising 3 children alone was not romantic. There were no soft lullabies playing in the background, no picturesque family breakfasts. There were fevers that wouldn't break at night, scraped knees, last-minute parent-teacher meetings, and bills she had to count and recount before deciding which to pay. Minjun, the eldest by 4 minutes, was the responsible one, always helping her carry groceries, always watching his younger siblings with eyes far older than his age. Haun, the only girl, was brave and sensitive, often comforting her mother with a quiet hug instead of words. Jisoo, the youngest, was the wild spirit, always asking questions, always wanting to know why his father wasn't around like other kids' dads. First, she lied. "He's far away," she'd say, folding laundry while avoiding their gaze. "He's working somewhere where he can't come back yet." But kids grow. They feel silence more loudly than words. One night, when they were about 8, Jisoo looked up from his homework and asked, "Mom, did Dad ever love you?" The question pierced through her chest. She sat down slowly beside him. Her hand brushed his hair gently. "He loved me once," she said, voice steady. "But sometimes people change, and it has nothing to do with you, understand? His choices were his, but they don't define yours." Jisoo didn't respond right away. Then he said, softly, "When I grow up, I'll love someone forever, like you did." She bit her lip to stop the tears. But while pain lived in the corners of their home, so did love. They had their traditions. Sundays were pancake mornings, even when there was only enough flour for 3. On New Year's, they wrote letters to each other instead of buying gifts. And every birthday, RA made sure each child felt like the most important person in the world, even if all she could afford was a homemade card and a small pastry. She never let them see how exhausted she was. At night, when the apartment grew quiet, she'd sit by the window, stare at the moon, and whisper her fears. She missed being touched, missed being held, missed being asked if she'd eaten, if she was okay. But she never missed him. Not anymore, because the man she once loved had vanished the day he chose another life. And yet, far across the city, in a penthouse decorated with cold steel and marble, Kang Ji-hoon felt something missing, something no amount of success could silence. His company had become a major tech empire, now expanding into global markets. Investors praised his vision, magazines wrote about his rise, and his wife, Yoon-hee, ensured their image remained flawless. But their house echoed. No laughter, no warmth, no silly pancake sundaes. Yoon-hee was intelligent, ambitious, and poised, but she saw the world as something to conquer, not something to hold gently. "Ji-hoon," she said one evening over dinner, her voice polished and cool. "I received an invitation to a gala hosted by the Minister of Innovation. We should attend together. They're considering our firm for an international grant." He nodded absently. "Also," she added, "your secretary said you didn't attend your anniversary photo shoot. That's the third one you've canceled." Ji-hoon didn't look up from his wine. "I had meetings." She stared at him for a moment. "Are you bored of me?" He glanced at her finally. No, but the silence that followed said otherwise. That night, he opened a drawer in his study and pulled out a small photo, creased old. It was a candid shot of R.A. on their wedding day. Her hair was messy from the wind, her dress modest, but her smile, it had been real. He ran his fingers over the image, then tucked it away as if ashamed of remembering. The next day, he boarded a plane to Tokyo for a major business merger. On the surface, everything was perfect, but deep inside, someone, still echoed. Back in her humble apartment, R.A. watched her children grow into little versions of strength and brilliance. Minjun started coding at 12. Haun won an art scholarship. Jisoo became the class leader. Their teachers called them gifted. But more than talent, they had heart. One morning, the principal of a prestigious youth innovation camp called her. "Mrs. Yoon, your children, they're remarkable. We'd like to offer them full scholarships to represent our country in an international competition." She nearly dropped the phone. In the months that followed, the children worked as a team, pouring every ounce of their creativity into a new eco-tech solution. Their names started appearing in online articles. People began to notice them, and so did someone else. One evening, Ji-hoon was handed a file by his assistant. "There's a youth startup team causing a stir, sir. Their pitch is revolutionary. You might want to attend their demo. They could be acquisition material." He skimmed the page and froze. 3 names, 3 faces, 1 gut punch. Minjun, Haun, Jisoo. He stared at their profiles, their ages, the timelines, their eyes. They had his eyes. He stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. His assistant looked startled. "Sir." Ji-hoon walked to the window, chest tight, throat burning. His pulse thudded in his ears. Couldn't be. Could it? For a long time, he had convinced himself that R.A. had moved on, that maybe she remarried, that she was happier without him. But the truth had never left him, only haunted him. He had 3 children, and he had abandoned them all. In that moment, the empire he had built felt like glass, clear, towering, but fragile. All it took was the memory of a woman with wind-blown hair and 3 pairs of eyes that looked too much like his. And suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon realized something terrifying. He hadn't just left love behind. He had left his own blood. He didn't tell Yoon-hee. He couldn't. Instead, he began making excuses to rearrange his schedule. He called off a board meeting, postponed a business trip, and instructed his driver to take him to the location of the innovation demo where the youth team, the one with his children, would be presenting. It was held in a large, glass conference center downtown. Bright banners of future makers and next-gen innovators hung from the ceiling. The lobby buzzed with teenagers in suits, young minds full of promise, while parents hovered in the background with nervous pride. He slipped in unnoticed, wearing dark glasses, his face half hidden under a cap. It wasn't that he feared the public. It was that he feared himself. He didn't know what kind of father or man he was about to face. Inside the main auditorium, the lights dimmed and a voice echoed across the room. Now presenting Team Horizon, led by Minjun, Haun, and Ji Soo-yoon. He stopped breathing. 3 figures walked on stage. Minjun stood tall, poised, with a quiet strength in his eyes that mirrored the determination Ji-hoon had once seen in his own reflection. Haun, graceful and composed, held the audience effortlessly, her voice filled with intelligence and purpose. And Ji-soo, energetic, passionate, unpredictable, moved like a flame, igniting the room with his charisma. Ji-hoon's hands trembled. As they presented their invention, a sustainable, low-cost energy system for rural communities, the audience was visibly impressed. The judges leaned in. Applause broke out before they even finished. But Ji-hoon didn't hear any of it. All he could hear was the echo of Ra's voice from years ago. "I just wanted to say I'm pregnant. It's yours. That's all." And he never called back. His vision blurred. Not from lights, from guilt. He clapped like the rest when their presentation ended, but his heart was crumbling. His children were brilliant, kind, united, and they had built everything without him. Then he saw her. In the back of the room, half shadowed by a pillar, Ra stood watching the stage. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her chest. Her eyes sparkled, not with tears, but with quiet, overwhelming pride. She looked the same and completely different. Her hair was a little shorter, her clothes simple but neat. Time had touched her, but it hadn't broken her. If anything, she had grown stronger, refined by hardship into something far more powerful than beauty. Resilience. Ji-hoon took a step toward her, then stopped. He couldn't move. He watched as the children ran off stage toward her. She knelt to meet them, embracing them all at once. They chattered with excitement, their words overlapping. "Did you see them clap? Mom, we nailed it. You think we'll win?" And then Jisoo said, without knowing the earthquake his words would cause, "I wish Dad could have seen us." Ra paused just a breath before smiling. "He would have been proud. But I saw you, and I've never been prouder." Ji-hoon had to grip the seat in front of him to keep from falling. He left before they could see him. That night, he returned home in silence. Yoon-hee was waiting in the living room, dressed in an expensive robe, sipping tea with a cold expression. "You disappeared," she said. "I went to an event," he replied, voice dull. Her eyes narrowed. "Without telling anyone?" Again, Ji-hoon sat down. "Do you remember Ra?" There was a pause. Yoon-hee set her cup down carefully. "Of course, the woman you were married to before me. The one who didn't belong in our world. She had children." Yoon-hee tilted her head. "Yes, I recall some rumors. But you said they weren't." "They're mine." The air in the room turned sharp. "You never confirmed that." "I never wanted to," he admitted. "I couldn't. I think I always knew. But now I've seen them. They're brilliant. They've done more at 15 than I had by 30. Yoon-hee stood up. "And why exactly are you telling me this now?" "Because they exist. And they're part of me." Her voice turned icy. "So what? You're going to bring them into our life?" "Let the world know the perfect Kang Ji-hoon fathered 3 illegitimate children with some woman from a rooftop apartment. She's not some woman. She's the reason I ever had a chance." Yoon-hee's mouth twisted. "And what about me? I've stood by your side while you built this empire. I gave up my connections, my life, for your name. And now you're thinking of throwing it all away for children you never raised." Ji-hoon looked at her, quiet for a moment. "I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I know this. I can't pretend they don't exist anymore." He left the room without waiting for her reply. Days passed. He didn't contact them. He watched from a distance online articles, event recaps, short interview clips. The children smiled for the cameras. Ra never appeared. She stayed in the background, always watching, always proud. Then the final round of the competition was announced. a formal gala where the top 5 teams would present in front of high-level investors and national media. Ji-hoon was one of the keynote sponsors. He would have to see them again. And this time, he knew hiding wouldn't be an option. He stood before his wardrobe that night, staring at rows of designer suits. But no matter what he chose, none of it made him feel ed beneath murmurs of business talk and soft laughter. Ji-hoon stood at the top of the stairs in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His posture was flawless, the image of a man in control. But his hands were sweating. Every flash of a camera, every whisper in the crowd seemed louder than it should have. He had faced entire boards of international investors with calm precision. He had turned entire companies around with a single decision. And yet now, waiting for the doors to open on this event, one he had attended dozens of times before, he felt like a coward. Because tonight, he wouldn't be addressing shareholders. He would be looking into the eyes of his children, and possibly hers. The moment arrived. A hush fell over the crowd as the announcer's voice rang out, clear and ceremonial. Please welcome our top young innovators of the year, Team Horizon. Applause rose, thunderous and enthusiastic. From the opposite end of the ballroom, Ji-hoon saw them walk in. Min-jun, tall and proud. Ha-eun, graceful and glowing in a white formal dress that RA must have saved months for. Ji-soo, slightly awkward in his suit, trying not to trip over his own feet as he grinned nervously. They didn't notice him yet. His heart beat faster. He watched as they walked up to the main presentation stage. They greeted the guests, bowed, and began to speak with the same elegance and purpose that had stunned him the first time. He should have been proud, but guilt was louder than pride. Then he saw her. At the edge of the room, barely visible behind a column of tall floral arrangements, stood R.A. She wore a simple navy dress, not flashy or modern, but clean and timeless. Her hair was tied back, and her hands were clasped in front of her like always. But her eyes, they moved straight across the room and found his. She had seen him. He froze. She didn't blink. She didn't move. But he could feel the weight of her gaze like a wave crashing through him. And for the first time in nearly a decade, Ji-hoon felt completely exposed. Their children continued, unaware of the silent storm brewing between their parents. After the pitch, the crowd rose in standing ovation. The media surged forward for questions. Judges took notes. Businesspeople handed cards. And Ji-hoon? He left the stage area like a man retreating from battle. He needed air. Or maybe forgiveness. He found a quieter corridor near the back of the venue, beneath a sign that read, Private Lounge. His hands rested against the wall, chest rising and falling with effort. He didn't hear her footsteps, only her voice. It's strange, Ari said quietly. Seeing you again, in a place like this. He turned slowly. She stood just a few feet away, closer than he thought she'd ever allow. R.A., he breathed. She tilted her head slightly. You still remember my name? He nodded. I never forgot. Her voice remained steady, calm, but beneath it there was fire. I wasn't sure if you would come, she continued. You always like to run from discomfort. I didn't know what to say, he admitted, eyes wet. I didn't even know if you'd speak to me. Why now? She asked, arms folding gently across her chest. After all these years? After choosing silence? After choosing her? I didn't come here to justify what I did, he said. There are no words that can undo what I became. But I saw them, our children, and for the first time in years, I remembered what it felt like to be human again. A muscle twitched in her jaw. You had a chance to be human when I told you I was pregnant, she said, voice low. You had a chance to call, to care, even a single message, Ji-hoon. I would have survived on that. I was ashamed, he said, and I was a coward. I thought I had built something great, but I was wrong. I didn't build a life. I built a mask. Silence stretched between them like an unspoken truth. She stepped closer. I carried 3 children alone, she said. I watched them cry for a father I had to invent stories about just to help them sleep. I buried my dreams. I worked 3 jobs. I missed meals so they wouldn't. I sewed their uniforms and stitched every whole life tore through us. Her voice cracked slightly, just slightly. You don't get to walk back in now and call yourself a father. I know, he whispered. I know I don't deserve it. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out something small, trembling. A folded photograph. He handed it to her. It was the photo from their wedding day, the one he'd hidden for years. I've carried this with me all this time, he said. Even when I convinced myself I didn't love you anymore. Even when I told myself you were just part of my past. I couldn't throw this away. She looked at the photo, then at him. And for the first time since they met that night, her eyes softened. But only for a second. I don't know what you're trying to do, Ji-hoon, she said. Win them back? Win me back? It's not that simple. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he replied. Not yet. I just want to know them. I want to be near them, even if I have to stand in the shadows for the rest of my life. R.A. looked away, eyes shining. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. They deserve the truth. I want to give them that, he said. Whenever you think they're ready. She looked at him again. This time no fire, only exhaustion. They're stronger than both of us, she said. But they're also kind and curious. Be careful with their hearts, Ji-hoon. They carry mine inside them. But inside the small apartment where those triplets lived, the world was quieter, more fragile. R.A. sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her mind replayed the conversation from the night before over and over again. Ji-hoon's face, his voice, the way he looked at her like a man who had finally realized what he'd lost. She hadn't told the children yet. How could she? They deserved to know. But how do you tell your children that the man they dreamed of, the invisible hero they built in their hearts, had been standing a few feet away last night, real, flawed, and terribly late? From the living room, Ha-eun's voice broke the silence. Mom, is it true we're on the front page? Jisoo's laughter followed. We're famous. Can I sign autographs now? Minjun, as always, was quieter, watching, thinking. R.A. stood slowly and walked to them, still in her simple robe, her heart heavy. She knelt in front of them, her eyes meeting theirs. There's something I need to tell you, she said gently. They turned toward her instantly, sensing the shift in her tone. The excitement faded. Silence settled. It's about your father. Jisoo blinked. Our real one. She nodded. Yes. Minjun's jaw tightened. Ha-eun reached for her mother's hand. I saw him last night, she said softly. At the gala. There was a pause. None of them moved. He was there, she continued, voice trembling. He saw you. He watched your whole presentation. And afterward, he came to talk to me. Jisoo's mouth opened slightly. Wait, he was there? Watching us? And he didn't even say anything? He didn't want to hurt you, she said. Not without knowing how you'd feel. He wasn't ready. But he wants to see you. Minjun stood abruptly. No, he said, voice low but sharp. No, he doesn't. Minjun. He wants to look like a father, he interrupted. But he isn't one. Not to us. Minjun. R.A.'s voice cracked. He stepped back, eyes wet, angry. Where was he when you cried yourself to sleep every night trying to feed us? Where was he when Jisoo broke his arm and we didn't have enough for the hospital bill? Or when Ha-eun got bullied at school for not having a dad? Where was he? The room fell silent. Only the sound of his shallow breaths filled the air. Jisoo sat still, quiet now, lips trembling. Does he even want us? Or just the headlines? Ha-eun, fighting tears, asked, Did he say sorry? R.A. hesitated, then nodded. Yes, he said he was ashamed, that he regrets everything. Minjun scoffed. Regret doesn't feed children, Mom. She stood and walked toward him. You have every right to feel this way. But listen to me, this isn't about him. This is about you. You're old enough now to choose whether or not you want to meet him. I won't force anything. I thought you deserved the truth. Minjun didn't respond. He walked into his room and closed the door quietly. Haun leaned into her mother. I don't know what I feel. I thought he was gone forever. It was easier when he didn't have a face. Ra stroked her daughter's hair, her heart breaking for the second time. Jisoo whispered, "Can we just pretend today's normal?" And so they did. The day passed with a strange stillness. No one mentioned Jihoon again. They went to school, ate dinner in silence, and when bedtime came, they hugged each other just a little tighter than usual. But Jihoon didn't sleep at all. He sat in his study, surrounded by untouched whiskey and cold silence. Every second that passed, he imagined what they were thinking of him. Did they hate him? Did they even want to know him? He picked up his phone more than once, ready to call, then put it down. In the end, he wrote a letter. It was the only thing that didn't feel like an intrusion. He folded the note by hand, placed it in an envelope, and drove himself, without the driver, without the car that screamed power, to the edge of the neighborhood he once scorned. He didn't knock on the door. Instead, he slipped the letter into the mailbox and walked away. The next morning, Ra found it as she stepped out to buy bread. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was familiar, neat, a little shakier than she remembered. To Minjun, Haun, and Jisoo, you don't know me as your father, and maybe you never will. Maybe you don't want to, and I understand. I wouldn't want me either. But I wanted to say that what I saw on that stage, it shook something inside me that I had buried long ago. You are extraordinary, not because of me, because of your mother, because of yourselves. I missed everything and I can't undo that. But if there is a space, even a small one, where I could be allowed to know who you are, not as a father, but just as a man who knows he failed you, I'll wait. I'll never force my presence. You don't owe me anything. I only hope to earn the right to say, I'm proud of you, in person someday. Kang Jihoon Minjun hadn't spoken much since the day it arrived. He spent his time in his room, headphones on, eyes fixed on his laptop but never really typing. Haun kept herself busy sketching in her notebook, though every page lately had lines that seemed shakier, more uncertain. Jisoo, curious, open-hearted Jisoo, had read the letter 3 times and still hadn't said what he truly felt. Ra sat on the sofa, watching the 3 of them without saying a word. The ache in her chest was different now. Not the pain of being alone, but the pain of knowing their hearts were being stretched in too many directions. And then, without warning, Minjun came out of his room. "Mom," he said quietly, eyes steady. "I want to see him." The words hung in the air like a lightning bolt that had paused mid-strike. Ra looked up slowly, her breath catching. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice soft, cautious. He nodded. "I don't know what I'll say. I don't even know if I can forgive him. But I need to look him in the eye. I need to hear from him, not just paper." Haun glanced up, startled. "You do?" Minjun turned to her. "Don't you want to know? Even a little? What kind of man he really is?" There was a long pause. Then, reluctantly, she gave a single nod. Jisoo, still curled up on the corner of the couch, whispered, "If we go together." Ra swallowed the lump in her throat. She stood, walked to them, and touched each of their faces, one by one. Her voice shook. "Whatever you feel, whatever happens when you meet him, I want you to know, nothing changes how loved you are. Not by me, not by each other. You go there with your head high, knowing that you are more than someone's regret. You are my greatest joy." The next morning, she sent a message to the number Jihoon had scrawled in the corner of the envelope. "They're ready to meet. Saturday, 4 p.m. at the park by Han River. No cameras, no drivers, just you." There was no reply, just a single checkmark turning blue. But that was enough. Saturday arrived with the kind of stillness that made the world feel slower. The sky was overcast, the air thick with the promise of rain but holding back as if waiting, just like everyone else. They arrived at the park together. Minjun in a collared shirt, trying not to look nervous. Haun with her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her shoulders stiff. Jisoo, gripping a folded piece of paper in his pocket like a shield. They sat on a bench beneath a tree, the river stretching wide and calm behind them. And then they saw him. Ji-hoon approached from across the lawn, not in a suit or expensive shoes, but in jeans and a simple jacket. No assistant, no car in sight. Just a man walking slowly, like someone approaching a life he thought he'd never be allowed to touch again. He stopped a few feet away. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Ji-soo, true to his heart, broke the silence. "You don't look like how I imagined," he said. Not accusing, just curious. Ji-hoon managed a small smile. "You don't either. You look so much more." He looked at each of them, eyes soft, searching. "I've played this moment 100 times in my head, but standing here I don't even know how to begin." Minjun stood up. "Then don't rehearse," he said. "Just tell the truth." Ji-hoon nodded, slowly. "The truth is, I was afraid. When I found out your mom was pregnant, I panicked. I was in too deep, caught in a world where image meant everything. I told myself walking away was the cleanest option." He looked down. "But it wasn't clean. It was cowardly. And every year that passed, I thought about turning back. But the longer I waited, the more I believed I had no right." Haun finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Why now?" "Because I saw you," he said, looking at her. "And I realized I had missed something I could never buy back. And I thought, even if I can't have your forgiveness, maybe I can at least carry your truth." Ji-soo pulled the folded paper from his pocket. "It's a list," he said, holding it out, "of questions. Not big ones. Just stuff we wanted to know." Ji-hoon took it with trembling fingers. Favorite food. First pet. Song he listened to on bad days. Whether he was good at math. What he dreamed of when he was young. Each question was simple, but together they were everything. He sat down on the grass beside them, unfolding the paper gently. "Let's start here," he said. "I'll answer all of them." They sat together for hours, not laughing, not crying, just talking, one answer at a time, one truth after another. The rain never came, but something else did. Not quite forgiveness. At first, there were no grand gestures, no hugs, no tearful embraces like in the dramas Ji-soo secretly liked to watch. But there were small changes. Texts, simple ones. From Ji-hoon, "Did you end up choosing the robotics track?" Minjun? From Haun, "Do you still play guitar like Mom said you used to?" From Ji-soo, "What kind of pizza do you like? We're taking a vote." And Ji-hoon always answered, carefully, honestly, gratefully. They began to meet once a week. Always at the park. Always just the four of them. The conversations deepened. Ji-hoon learned that Haun hated group presentations but loved painting sunrises. That Ji-soo was the one who could never finish a story without going off on tangents. That Minjun's silence wasn't coldness. It was caution, protection. And one day, Ji-hoon brought something with him. A box. "I found some things," he said, gently placing it on the bench. Things from before. The kids looked at it, uncertain. Inside were photos, handwritten notes, the tiny silver ring from the day he proposed to R.A. Even the ramen loyalty card they'd used in university, long expired but never thrown away. "It's not much," he said, voice thick. "But they're pieces of who I used to be, of who we used to be. I wanted you to have them." Minjun lifted a photo and stared. It was of their mother, younger, laughing mid-bite with noodles halfway to her mouth. Her cheeks full, her eyes bright, the kind of joy that couldn't be faked. "Was this before?" Minjun asked, not looking up. "Before everything changed?" Ji-hoon nodded. "Before I let fear and pride ruin everything." Silence lingered again, until Ji-soo broke it. "Are you going to tell her you've been seeing us?" That question landed like a stone in Ji-hoon's chest. He hesitated. Then, "No, not yet. I want this space with you to be yours, not part of a performance." Haun tilted her head. "So what is she, then? Your wife? Your partner? Or just the one you chose when you left?" Another pause. "She was a choice," Ji-hoon said. "But not the right one. Not in the way I thought. I convinced myself I needed someone who belonged to the world I was building. But the truth is, I was building the wrong world. The words hung in the air, like something sacred. That evening, after they said goodbye, Ji-hoon didn't return to his penthouse. Instead, he drove slowly, aimlessly, until he found himself parked outside a quiet street near a familiar rooftop building. The one where it all began. Lights were off, but he could see the shadow of a woman moving behind the curtain. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just sat in his car watching her silhouette. The way she still tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she paused as if listening for something, even when the world was quiet. And he whispered, to no one but himself, "I'm sorry, Are. I'm so sorry." But not far away, in a much colder part of the city, someone else was watching too. Chae-yoon, he stood by her office window, arms crossed, her assistant nervously standing beside her. "You're certain?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with danger. The assistant nodded. "He's been meeting with them regularly. The children are his. The woman is Yoon Ra. Yoon, he turned slowly. And he didn't think I'd find out." She walked across the room to her desk, picked up a silver pen, and tapped it twice against a file. Then she opened it. Inside were articles, photos, a printed copy of the letter Ji-hoon had written, intercepted, scanned, recorded. "I gave up everything to stand beside him," she said, almost to herself. "And now he's throwing it all away for ghosts." Her assistant hesitated. "Should I prepare something?" She looked up, her eyes sharp. "Prepare everything." The security guard had stopped them at the gate that morning. Unusual but polite. "Just a routine check," he said, which none of them believed. During lunch, they caught strange looks from teachers. A group of students whispered too loudly in the hallway, then quieted when the siblings passed by. Haun tried to brush it off, but her stomach was tight the rest of the day. Jisoo, always talkative, barely said a word. Minjun noticed the glances first. Noticed how students weren't just looking, they were recording. By the time they reached home that evening, Ra was already standing outside the apartment building. Her phone clutched in her hand, her face pale. Minjun saw her expression and froze. What happened? She looked at them, then glanced around and pulled them inside. She shut the door behind her as if the world might crash through it at any second. "I need you to sit down," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. The three of them did, uneasily, watching her. She handed Minjun her phone. Someone leaked the story. On the screen was a tabloid headline in bold. Tycoon's hidden heirs. Kang Ji-hoon's secret triplets, and the woman he abandoned. Below it were photos. Grainy shots from the park. Close-ups of the children. Even a picture of Ra walking out of her apartment, groceries in hand. They'd been followed. Haun covered her mouth. "No." Jisoo's eyes widened. "But we didn't do anything wrong. There's more," Ra said. Her hands were shaking now. She sat slowly. "Your school's board has received pressure. They're holding an emergency meeting. The sponsors of the innovation program. They're panicking." Minjun's jaw clenched. "Who leaked it?" "I don't know," she said. "But I have my suspicions." She didn't say Yoonhee's name. She didn't have to. "Why now?" Jisoo said, his voice breaking. "Why would anyone want to hurt us?" "Because power," Minjun replied, bitter. "Hates losing control." The room fell into a heavy silence. That night, Ji-hoon showed up without calling. He didn't even knock. He stood at the front door, soaked from the rain that had started to fall, looking like a man who had just walked through fire. Ra opened the door. Her eyes were stone. "Come in," she said, but there was no warmth in it. He stepped inside slowly, meeting the eyes of his children, and seeing the trust he had worked so hard to rebuild, now splintered and hanging by threads. "I didn't know this would happen," he said immediately. "I swear I didn't plan any of this." "Did she?" Ra asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, "She must have. She always said she'd do anything to protect what we built. But I never thought she'd go this far." "She's your wife, Ji-hoon," Minjun said sharply. "Your choices are hers. You chose her over us once. And now her war is our fallout. Ji-hoon took a shaky breath. Then let me fix this. How? Ha-eun asked. Her voice was laced with something worse than anger. Disappointment. You're going to make it disappear with money? No, he said. I'm going to make it right. The truth has been twisted. She's painted you like a scandal. But you're not. You're the best thing I've ever been part of. And I'll stand in front of the world and say it. R.A. looked at him long and hard. And what about her? What happens when Yoon-hee decides this isn't enough? That she wants us erased. I'll leave her, Ji-hoon said. The words fell like thunder. No one spoke for several seconds. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to pause. R.A.'s voice was low. Do you even know what that means? Yes, he said. It means the empire I built, the image I've preserved, the investors I've kept happy. It all falls apart. She's tied to all of it. But I don't care anymore. Not if it means letting her destroy you. His eyes turned to the kids. I'll hold a press conference. I'll go on record. You're my children. You've done nothing wrong. And the world will hear that from me. Minjun looked away, conflicted. Jisoo stared at the floor. Ha-eun's hand gripped her mother's. And then R.A. whispered, barely audible. And after that? He met her gaze. After that, whatever space you'll allow me to have in your lives, I'll take. Even if it's nothing. The rain intensified outside, hammering softly against the windows. Ji-hoon left that night without another word. And 2 days later, the nation watched as one of its most powerful men stood behind a podium, camera flashes blinding, and said, "Yes, they are my children. Yes, I made the gravest mistake of my life by walking away. And no, they are not a secret. They are my blood, my legacy, and the reason I am now trying to become a better man." The internet exploded. Investors panicked. Shares dropped. Reporters demanded interviews. But none of it mattered, because for the first time, Kang Ji-hoon wasn't hiding. She didn't flinch. Her assistant hovered nearby, afraid to breathe. "He actually did it," she said, almost amused. "The idiot actually did it." "Ma'am," the assistant whispered. "What would you like me to?" "Leave," Yoon-hee said. Her voice was like ice sliding across a blade. "And tell the legal team to release the documents. The prenup." She didn't look at him. "No, the entire archive. Contracts, partnerships, everything he tried to keep clean." She waited until the door closed before reaching into her drawer, pulling out a manila folder. Inside were photos, receipts, emails, and a marriage certificate. The very thing Ji-hoon had once asked her to destroy. "You gave me everything, Ji-hoon," she whispered to herself. "And now you'll watch me take it back." Back in the small apartment, the air was heavy. The children sat quietly at the kitchen table. R.A. was on the couch, the TV muted but still flashing clips of the press conference on loop. Her heart was a tangled mess, torn between relief, fear, and something dangerously close to hope. She didn't know what Ji-hoon's next move would be, but one thing was certain. He had finally chosen them, publicly, without hesitation, and that had shaken something inside her she didn't want to name. The knock at the door came softly. She stood slowly and opened it. Ji-hoon was there, drenched from the rain that had returned like a warning. "I had to come," he said, his voice almost hoarse. "I wanted you to hear it from me before anyone else twisted it." She stepped aside. He entered and saw the kids, sitting there watching him, not as strangers, not quite as family, but somewhere in between. "I saw your speech," Minjun said. "You meant it." "I did," Ji-hoon replied. "Every word." "You really quit?" Jisoo asked. "The company?" Ji-hoon nodded. "It's no longer mine. Not fully. I stepped down from the board. My stake is frozen until further notice." The backlash was immediate. "Why would you do that?" Ha-eun asked quietly. "You spent your whole life building it." He looked at her, really looked. "Because I spent my whole life chasing something that meant nothing without you." There was a long pause. Then R.A. spoke. "What happens now?" He turned to her, and in his eyes, there was no pride, no suit of armor, only a man stripped down to everything he had left. Regret and resolve. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I can't undo the years I missed. I can't take away the pain I caused. But I want to be here. I want to know who each of you are. Not because of guilt, but because I finally understand what I walked away from." He reached into his coat and pulled out a document, gently placing it on the table. "What's this?" R.A. asked. "A petition," he replied, "to legally recognize them as my children. Full rights, inheritance, everything." Minjun's eyes narrowed. "You think money will fix this?" "No," Ji-hoon said. "I think truth might." There was silence again, heavy and layered. Then Jisoo stood up. "I want to believe you," he said. "I really do. But part of me still wonders. If this all hadn't gone public, would you still be here?" Ji-hoon looked at him, no defensiveness in his gaze. "That's a fair question, and I don't expect you to trust me just because I finally showed up. But if you give me time, I'll earn it." Haun spoke softly, eyes still on the petition. "What about her? She won't let this go quietly." "She already hasn't," Ji-hoon said grimly. "I'm expecting a storm. She'll try to destroy what little is left of me." R.A. stepped closer, her voice steady. "Then you need to decide what you're really willing to lose." He looked at her, heart pounding. "I already have," he said, "and I won't lose you again." The room was still. No one spoke. No one needed to, because somewhere in the silence, a fragile thread had been tied. Not of forgiveness, not yet, but of something deeper, a willingness to begin again. But as they stood there, gathered in a fragile circle of rebuilding, far across the city, Yoon-hee pressed send on an email addressed to every major media outlet in the country. Attached were files, personal, legal. Tycoon's mistress-turned-wife releases damning evidence. Kang Ji-hoon accused of financial fraud, contract breach, and moral misconduct. Attached were files so detailed, so viciously timed, that the damage was instant. Emails between Ji-hoon and early investors hinting at questionable agreements. Screenshots of texts out of context but twisted enough to imply bribery. Old drafts of NDAs. A video clip of him raising his voice in a boardroom, spun as aggression. And one document stood out among the rest. A sworn statement from Chai Yoon-hee, declaring Ji-hoon mentally unstable due to a recent obsessive attachment to illegitimate children, and a woman from his past who manipulates him emotionally. Within 24 hours, stockholders began to pull out. The board issued a public notice suspending Ji-hoon's voting rights and investigating his role in past company decisions. His name, once synonymous with vision and prestige, was now tangled in suspicion and scandal. When the article hit, Ji-hoon was in the kitchen of R.A.'s apartment, helping Jisoo practice a school presentation. The boy was laughing, nervous but excited, and Ji-hoon was actually smiling, nodding with pride when Jisoo used a metaphor to explain a science concept. Then the door slammed open. Minjun stormed in, his phone shaking in his hand. "Turn on the TV," he said. R.A., who had been folding laundry nearby, paused. She walked over, turned it on. The headline was already screaming across the screen, and Ji-hoon knew immediately. The blood drained from his face. His body didn't move, but his chest collapsed inward. R.A.'s hand flew to her mouth. Haun's sketchbook slipped to the floor. Jisoo looked from the TV to his father, then back again, whispering, What is that?" Ji-hoon didn't answer. He couldn't. The anchorwoman's voice came through, sharp and polished. "And in light of these allegations, the board of Myritech is reportedly preparing to remove Mr. Kong from all remaining positions. The revelations come after his recent public admission of fathering 3 children out of wedlock." "Are those real?" Minjun asked. His voice was hard, but his eyes, they were filled with something Ji-hoon hadn't seen in weeks. Fear. He stepped forward. "Did you do those things? Lie to investors? Sign shady deals?" Ji-hoon finally looked up. His voice came out low and hollow. "Some of them, yes. Years ago. I thought I was being smart. I justified it as survival. No one got hurt. Not at the time. Not at the time? Haun echoed, backing up. So this isn't just her revenge? You did this. Ji-hoon turned toward her, anguish twisting his face. I did things I'm ashamed of. I broke rules. I crossed lines. But I swear, none of it was to hurt you. Jisoo sat on the floor, his knees pulled to his chest. Everyone's going to say you're a criminal now. RA finally spoke, her voice trembling. She's not just going after your business. She's trying to destroy your soul in front of the whole country. She always said she'd do it, Ji-hoon whispered. If I ever left her. If I ever dared to choose anything else. Min-jun stepped back, arms crossed tightly across his chest. You should have seen this coming. I did, Ji-hoon said, meeting his eyes. But I thought, if I told the truth first, I could control the fall. His voice cracked. I was wrong. No one moved for a long time. Then RA walked over and turned off the TV. We need to be careful, she said. Her voice was calmer than expected. If this continues, the school will be next. The kids are in the public eye now. I'm not going to let her tear their futures apart because of your past. I won't let that happen, Ji-hoon said quickly. I'll do whatever it takes to protect them. Min-jun shook his head. You already did the damage. But Ji-hoon stood tall. No, he said. She did. And now I have to prove to all of you that I won't run this time. He turned to RA, pain etched into every line on his face. I'll fix this. I don't care if I lose everything. Just don't let her take you. She stared at him for a long moment, then said nothing. That night, the kids went to bed early, pretending to sleep. RA stayed up at the table with the window open, the city lights flickering outside like warning signs. Ji-hoon sat across from her. She wants to ruin me, he said. But I think she's forgotten. There's nothing left for her to destroy. Then what are you still fighting for? RA asked quietly. His eyes met hers. When he opened it, two men in dark suits stood there. No greetings, no smiles. Just silence and a badge. Mr. Kang Ji-hoon? The taller one asked. Yes. You're being summoned for questioning regarding the allegations presented by Mrs. Chai Yoon-hee, along with newly submitted evidence of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and misconduct. We need you to come with us. Behind him, Min-jun appeared in the hallway. Haun, a few steps behind, clutching Jisoo's hand. Ji-hoon turned around slowly, eyes locking with RA's. I'll be back, he whispered. You don't know that, she said softly. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. If anything happens, you keep your promise, she interrupted, tears in her voice. You don't run. He gave the smallest nod. Then he was gone. The door closed, and the apartment fell into a silence so loud it hurt. That afternoon, the media devoured the story. Kang Ji-hoon taken for interrogation. Legal firestorm grows. Reporters gathered outside the station like vultures waiting for a signal. Inside, Ji-hoon sat at a steel table under fluorescent lights that made his skin look paler, his eyes darker. Across from him, the lead investigator dropped a thick file on the table. Do you deny these documents? Ji-hoon looked down. Contracts he had signed years ago. Technical language. Footnotes written in his own handwriting. No, he said quietly. They're real. Do you understand the scope of the damage you caused? I do. Then why admit to them now? Why not bury them? You had the resources. Ji-hoon leaned forward. Because burying things is what got me here. I spent years pretending I wasn't wrong. But I am. And if this is the price of truth, then I'll pay it. The investigator watched him, unsure whether he was witnessing madness or redemption. Back at home, the atmosphere was unbearable. RA stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the wind tug at the old laundry line across the alley. She hadn't spoken in hours. Min-jun sat at the table, hunched over his laptop, scanning news updates. Haun was curled up on the couch, staring blankly at her sketchpad. Jisoo had retreated into his room and locked the door. Finally, Min-jun slammed the lid shut. This is never going to end, he muttered. RA turned. It will. He looked up. How? She's got power. Lawyers. Money. We're just... His voice cracked. We're just people trying to live. R.A. walked over and sat beside him. Her voice was quiet but steady. We may not have power like hers, but we have truth. And that means something. Especially now. Minjun looked at her, eyes filled with old wounds that were reopening. He changed, he said. Didn't he? She didn't answer immediately. Then, he's changing. That takes more courage than I ever expected from him. Haun finally looked up. What if they arrest him? What if we lose him again? We won't, R.A. said. Not this time. By nightfall, Ji-hoon was released under provisional clearance. Not innocent, not free, but not lost. He stood outside the police station with a file under one arm and a hollow expression on his face. His lawyer had left. His phone buzzed with missed calls. Reporters waited at the corners, but didn't dare approach. And then he saw her, R.A., standing across the street, no umbrella, rain soaking into her coat. She hadn't brought the children. This was something between just them. He crossed the road slowly. She didn't move. I didn't want them to see you like this, she said. I understand. Her eyes searched his. You told them the truth? All of it. You didn't fight it. You didn't deny anything. I can't change the past. I can only face it. She was quiet for a long time. Then, almost in a whisper, you always ran when things got hard. I know. And now you're standing in the middle of a fire you started, refusing to move. I have nowhere else to go, he said, voice trembling. Except forward. She stepped closer. Rain ran down her face, but she didn't flinch. I don't know if I can ever love you again, Ji-hoon, she said. But I'm not sure I want to hate you anymore either. He looked at her like a man being offered air after drowning. I don't want your forgiveness, he said. I want your faith. She nodded once, just once, and it was enough. He slept on the living room floor. No one offered the couch, not out of cruelty, but out of unspoken boundaries that had yet to shift. He didn't ask for comfort. He just folded the blanket every morning, helped with breakfast, and walked the children to school when they let him. One evening, the sound of scissors clicking from the bedroom drifted through the hallway. Haun was cutting colored paper for an art project. Ji-hoon sat in the kitchen, staring at an old cracked mug of barley tea that R.A. had handed him hours ago but never drank from. The silence between them was no longer sharp. It was heavy, careful. She entered quietly and leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. They're calmer with you here, she said. Even if they don't say it. Ji-hoon looked up slowly. I didn't expect that. I didn't either, she admitted. But I guess kids feel more than they understand. You're showing up. That means more than anything else right now. He nodded, eyes dropping. I just want to be useful. I know it's not enough. Maybe not, she said softly. But it's a start. A knock came at the door. R.A. tensed immediately. Ji-hoon stood, but she reached for the handle first. When she opened it, a deliverman held a white envelope with a gold seal. No name, no return address. Just an emblem. R.A. took it and closed the door. Ji-hoon frowned. What is it? She opened it slowly. Inside was a thick sheet of cardstock, engraved and pristine. An invitation. You are cordially invited to the annual Myri Founders Ball, celebrating legacy, leadership, and transition. She blinked in disbelief. Ji-hoon stepped forward and saw the emblem. His breath caught. They sent this to you? She nodded. Not to the children. Not to you. To me. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. This is Yoon-hee. There was a note attached. Typed. Cold. You've had your turn in the spotlight. Now I'm offering you one chance to walk away before everything you've rebuilt crumbles again. Bring the children. Let the world see what they are, yours. R.A. set the letter down with trembling fingers. I won't let her drag them into this, she whispered. Ji-hoon's voice was low, sharp. She's baiting us. I know, R.A. said, but we can't ignore it. If we don't show up, she'll spin the story however she wants. We'll be the cowards. The scandal she gets to rewrite. He exhaled shakily. If we go, it'll be a war. I'm not afraid of her, R.A. replied. Not anymore. Their eyes locked, hers filled with fire, his with dread. Then we go, Ji-hoon said. But not to play by her rules. This time we play by ours. The night of the gala was colder than expected. R.A. wore a black dress with long sleeves and no jewelry. Elegant, timeless, quiet strength. The children wore simple tailored outfits, no frills, no designer logos. Ji-hoon stood beside them in a dark suit. His tie loose, his eyes steady. They arrived as a family. The ballroom was a cathedral of wealth. Marble floors, chandeliers, and diamonds on every wrist. Conversations paused as they entered, necks craning, whispers starting. They walked together, not fast, not afraid. And then she appeared. Cha Yoon-hee, standing on the grand staircase like royalty. A crimson gown hugging her figure, diamonds like ice around her throat. She smiled, but her eyes were knives. Ah, she said loudly as they approached, just enough for the crowd to hear. The long-lost family. What a brave appearance. R.A. didn't blink. We received your invitation. Yoon-hee's smile grew colder. I thought it was time the world saw what you truly are. Not a victim, just a well-timed headline. Ji-hoon stepped forward. Enough. But Yoon-hee didn't flinch. You gave up everything, she said, eyes narrowing. For this. She looked at R.A., dissecting her, mocking her. A woman who lived off handouts. Children raised in a box apartment. Is this really your legacy, Ji-hoon? R.A. stepped forward then, voice like velvet over steel. No, she said. This is his redemption. And my children, they are not his shame. They are his salvation. Yoon-hee's eyes flared. You're nobody. R.A. smiled, gently, devastatingly. I was nobody, she said. And yet, here I stand. Whole. Gasps fluttered around them. Yoon-hee's mask cracked. Just for a second. Ji-hoon reached into his jacket, pulling out a folder. You leaked everything. But this time, so will I. He handed it to a reporter hovering nearby. Inside, proof. The full timeline. Documents she forged. Payments to journalists. Blackmail records. Her own signature again and again. Yoon-hee's face drained of color. You wouldn't, she hissed. I already did, Ji-hoon said, voice steady. Your war is over. Flashbulbs exploded. Yoon-hee turned, walking away with her head high, but her kingdom collapsing behind her. And in the middle of that room, R.A. took Ji-hoon's hand. Not out of love, not yet, but out of something new. Ji-hoon sat in the front seat, shoulders tense, hands locked on his knees. R.A. was next to him, her eyes cast toward the window, lips pressed in a line too still to be calm. The children were in the back, silent, but not asleep. No one had processed what had just happened. Not yet. It wasn't until they reached the apartment building and stepped into the small living room, their shoes damp from the rain, that the silence cracked. Jisoo broke it first. That woman, he said, voice low but shaking. She looked at us like we were dirt. Minjun dropped his blazer onto the chair. She wanted to make us feel ashamed. But I wasn't, Haun said. Not for 1 second. R.A. turned toward her, surprised. I looked at her, Haun went on, her voice gaining strength. And I thought, you can have all the gowns, all the hotels, all the cameras, but you'll never have what we have. You'll never know what it's like to fight and still be standing. Ji-hoon's throat tightened. He couldn't speak. He wanted to fall to his knees and thank her. Thank all of them. But he didn't know how to say it without breaking completely. Minjun finally looked at him. Why now? He asked, his tone not cruel but honest. Why fight back now, when you could have done it years ago? Ji-hoon inhaled slowly, stepping forward. His voice was quiet, but full. Because I didn't understand what I had to fight for, until I saw what I almost lost. He looked at each of them, not as a businessman, not as a stranger, but as a man stripped down to truth. I built towers with my hands, he continued, but none of them felt like home. I signed contracts, shook hands with kings, sat at tables worth millions, but I never belonged there. I was empty. His eyes turned to R.A. And you gave me something real and I ran. I let ambition become my compass and I got lost. Then I saw our children, your children, and I realized what a fool I've been. He took a breath. It shook. I didn't expect to be welcomed back. I still don't. But tonight, you stood next to me. You didn't have to. And I don't know what that means or what you feel, but I was proud, she said, cutting him off gently. He froze. Her eyes were soft now, glistening. I was terrified too, angry, unsure. But when she tried to make us feel small, I looked at you, Ji-hoon, and I saw a man who didn't flinch. You stood there, not as the tycoon, not as the man I once loved, but as a father. As someone who chose the storm instead of running from it. The children listened, barely breathing. And for the first time, she continued, I didn't feel like I was standing alone anymore. Ji-hoon's voice trembled. I never deserved your strength. She walked toward him, slow and quiet. No, you didn't. But now you're trying. And that means more than anything you ever gave me before. He looked at her, eyes full of disbelief. So what now? She didn't answer right away. Then she reached down, took his hand, and said softly, Now we rest. That night, they didn't talk anymore. They sat together on the worn couch, shoulder to shoulder, the children curled around them. Jisoo rested his head on Ji-hoon's lap. Minjun stayed up reading by the window. Haeun traced soft patterns into her sketchbook, this time of faces that looked like family. Outside, the city kept moving. The world kept judging. But inside those four walls, something had shifted. Something healed. It wasn't perfect. It never really does when something so fragile is still learning how to breathe. A week passed, then another. The world outside their home moved like a slow storm. Less chaotic than before, but heavy with tension. The public no longer whispered about the scandal with the same heat, but the questions still lingered. Whispers had simply turned inward, into boardrooms, into political circles, into whispers behind closed doors. Ji-hoon, now living entirely off the grid of his former empire, spent most of his days walking the children to school, helping them with projects, cooking simple meals, his hands learning again what they had forgotten, how to make a home, not a company. One afternoon, as the wind stirred gently through the balcony curtains, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a headline, a letter, sealed in red wax. No return address. R.A. turned it in her hands slowly. Ji-hoon noticed the look on her face as he stepped in from the hallway, drying his hands with a towel. What is it? She didn't answer. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet, typed, precise. You should check the courthouse filings. Custody. Wage. Her hands trembled. Ji-hoon stepped forward, his voice low. What does it say? She held it out without a word. He read it once, then again. His body stiffened. She's going after custody? He whispered. R.A. stared at him. Not of the kids. Of you. And in that instant, he understood. Yoonhee's final strike wasn't public. It was personal. She was trying to declare him mentally unfit, unstable, irresponsible, emotionally compromised. If she succeeded, the records would stain everything. Not just his name, but his right to be a father. He sat down hard on the chair. This was her endgame, he murmured. Make me confess. Strip me bare. Then finish me in court where no cameras can follow. R.A. sat beside him. I can testify, she said. I'll tell the judge you're not unfit, that you're present, that you've been nothing but honest since the moment you returned. He shook his head. They'll paint you as emotional, biased, just like they're painting me. Minjun stood in the hallway. He'd heard every word. She's trying to erase you, he said. Ji-hoon looked at him, and for the first time, there was a flicker of fear. Not just me. She wants this family to disappear. Haeun came to stand beside her brother. Then we don't let her. Jisoo peeked from behind the door. Can we go to court? Like, speak. R.A.'s eyes widened. No, I won't let them use you like. That. We're not children anymore, Minjun said. They need to hear us. All of us. Jihoon stared at his children, then looked at Ra. They deserve to be heard, he said softly. And if this is the final battle, I won't fight it alone. The day of the hearing arrived like thunder in their bones. The courtroom was cold, modern, hollow. Rows of polished wood, fluorescent lights overhead. Lawyers in suits moved like machines. In one corner, Yoon-hee, flawless in a muted gray, her expression unreadable. Her lawyer looked smug, as if this was already won. On the opposite side, Jihoon, sitting beside Ra. No lawyer in sight, only truth and the people he once lost. The judge entered. The room stood, and then the questions began. Yoon-hee's lawyer was sharp, elegant, relentless. Mr. Kong, isn't it true you left your former wife while she was pregnant? Yes. You did not provide financial support for 8 years? No. You only returned after the children gained media attention? Yes. Is it safe to say your sudden desire for connection could be emotionally erratic, perhaps even self-serving? Jihoon didn't flinch. No, he said. It's safe to say I was wrong for 8 years, and I'm trying to be right now. That doesn't make me unstable. That makes me human. The courtroom buzzed. Then came Ra. She took the stand with grace. She spoke slowly, clearly. Her voice held no bitterness, just truth. He left. Yes, he was gone. But he came back. And he stayed. He didn't run when the headlines turned. He didn't run when my children asked hard questions. He faced them. He showed up. Every day. That's more than most. Then the judge turned to the gallery. Would any of the children like to speak? Ra turned, eyes wide. Jihoon looked at them, and slowly Minjun stood. Then Haon, then Jisoo. 3 children walked to the center of a room designed to scare people into silence. And they spoke. Minjun went first. My father made mistakes, big ones, but I've never seen anyone work harder to earn a place they were never promised. He listens. He tries. He doesn't pretend to be perfect. And maybe that's what makes him ready. Then Haon. He shows up for the small things, the things cameras don't see. He checks my art supplies. He reads Jisoo's messy stories. He holds mom's hand when she's overwhelmed. He belongs with us. Then Jisoo. I didn't know I needed a dad. Until he became one. Silence filled the room. Yoon-hee looked down. And for once, she had nothing to say. The judge looked at Jihoon, then at the children, then at Ra. Her gavel fell. This court sees no grounds for any claim of mental instability or unfitness. Mr. Kang's legal standing as a parent remains intact and uncontested. This hearing is closed. The room burst into murmurs. But for Jihoon, all he could hear was his own heart, beating again. They walked out of the courthouse into sunlight. Ra turned to him, eyes soft. You're not running anymore, she said. He looked at her, emotion rising in his chest. I have nowhere else I'd rather be. No microphones waiting outside their door. No photographers hiding in alleyways. The world had moved on to its next scandal. But for Jihoon, everything had just begun. He woke early each morning before anyone else, boiled water for tea, folded the blankets on the living room floor, and watched the sun rise through the balcony window like it was a privilege, not a view. One morning, as the early light warmed the curtain edges, Ra stepped into the kitchen quietly. She didn't say anything, just watched him for a moment, her hair still undone, her voice still caught somewhere between waking and wondering. He turned and caught her gaze. You don't have to keep sleeping on the floor, she said gently. He smiled faintly. I like hearing them breathe at night. She sat at the table, crossing her arms. You've changed. I had to, he said. It was either change or lose everything again. She looked at him for a long time. There was a time I wanted you to suffer, she admitted. To feel even a piece of the emptiness I carried when I gave birth alone. When I walked home with 3 babies and no place to call home. Jihoon lowered his eyes, shame still living quietly in his chest. I know, he whispered. And I did. I still do. But now, she continued, her voice softer, I want something else. He looked up. I want to stop surviving, she said. I want to live. He didn't answer right away, but something behind his eyes changed. I don't want to be the man who takes from you, he said slowly. Not again. Not even love. If you want space, I'll give it. If you want to start fresh, I'll step aside. She reached forward then and placed her hand over his. I want to start fresh, she said. His breath caught. With me. Her voice trembled. With us. Not because we're rebuilding the past, but because this time we're building something new. A sound came from the hallway then. Tiny feet shuffling, a door creaking. Jisoo appeared, rubbing his eyes, dragging his blanket behind him like a tiny ghost. He looked at them, blinking. Is there breakfast? Ra smiled. There's always breakfast. The day moved on. Minjun and Haun joined them soon after. They made pancakes together, a little lumpy, a little burned. Jihoon tried flipping one and it landed on the counter. Laughter filled the room, soft and warm like music they hadn't heard in years. And when the kids went off to school, the house didn't feel empty. Felt full, with possibility. That afternoon, Jihoon stood outside a small building near the edge of town. A community center that had once been a rundown storage facility. The city had approved a program to turn it into a tech mentorship space for underserved youth. He had made a call, offered his time, his skills, not his name. The director greeted him warmly. You sure you want to start here? The man asked. No cameras, no fanfare. I don't need to be seen, Jihoon replied. I just want to be useful. And so he stayed. He taught coding classes to kids who reminded him of himself at 19. Hungry, uncertain, full of fire. He cleaned floors, organized supplies, repaired broken chairs. He worked with his hands again. Meanwhile, Ra began writing again. Short stories, simple things, mostly for herself. Haun helped her illustrate them. Jisoo started turning them into mini books with titles like How to Fix a Broken Dragon and The Boy Who Found a Father Under a Tree. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline and the family sat watching a movie in the living room, Jihoon leaned toward Ra. You know, he said, there's something I never told you. She glanced over, smiling faintly. What's that? That day you gave birth, he said. I was sitting in a hotel room, holding my phone, listening to your message over and over again. I wanted to call. I wanted to run to you, but I sat there, frozen, because I was scared. She nodded, her eyes not leaving his. I know. He blinked. You do. You never deleted the message, she said quietly. I saw it. When you left your phone unlocked that first day you came back. I listened to it once. His face filled with something like sorrow, but not shame. What did you hear? She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. I heard a woman who still believed you could be something better. He closed his eyes. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then softly, almost inaudibly, he whispered, Thank you for believing I still could. It wasn't much, just a gentle dusting over the city, a soft veil over rooftops and sidewalks, the kind of snow that melted when it touched skin. But it was enough to bring the children running to the window, pressing their palms to the glass, laughter spilling from their lips like warmth in the cold. Jihoon stood just behind them, hands in his pockets, watching their joy like someone watching a miracle he never thought he'd deserve to see. They've never seen snow like this before, Ra said from behind him. Not like this. Not with you here. He turned, his eyes soft. It's the first snowfall since I came back. You think it means something? She asked, folding her arms over her sweater. He nodded. Everything. Later that evening, after the kids had bundled up and run outside to build crooked snowmen in the alleyway, Jihoon took Ra's hand and led her to the small table in the corner of the apartment. It was the same table where she used to sort bills in silence. The same place where she once cried alone when no one was looking. Now it was warm, lived in, safe. He placed a small box between them. Her brows drew together. What is this? Not what you think, he said quickly. almost nervously. "It's not a ring. I'm not asking for that. Not yet." She let out a soft breath, half laugh, half relief. He opened it. Inside was a simple envelope. She took it out and turned it in her hands, then looked up at him. "What is this?" "My resignation," he said. She frowned. "From what?" "From the company. From the board. From the title. I officially gave up every remaining right. Everything tied to the old life. The last pieces of it." Her expression shifted, confused, searching. "But you already did that." He shook his head. "Not completely. Not legally. I still had influence. Still had ties. But I kept thinking, if I held on to any of it, maybe I could rebuild it. Maybe I could return. And now, he said, reaching for her hand, "I don't want to return. I want to begin." She swallowed hard, her voice low. "You're sure?" He nodded. "It's not my future anymore. You are. They are." Her eyes filled slowly, quietly. "I never asked you to give everything up," she said. "And I never will ask you to give me anything back," he replied. "But I needed to show you. This time, I stay even when there's nothing left to take." The door burst open then, snowflakes dancing in with laughter. "We made a snow village," Jisoo shouted. Haun stepped in behind him, cheeks flushed. "It's a little crooked, but it's perfect." Minjun followed last, quiet but smiling, holding a small pine branch like it was a trophy. "It's not much, but we made it together." Jihoon stood, walking over to them. He helped them out of their jackets, laughing as Jisoo's scarf caught around his neck and dragged him down. They all gathered on the floor then, cocoa in hand, a blanket tossed over their laps. Ra settled beside them, the resignation envelope still on the table, unopened but understood. The heater hummed quietly in the corner. Outside, the snow kept falling. At one point, as the children drifted off to sleep, Jihoon turned to Ra again, voice barely above a whisper. "I used to think legacy was what you leave behind." She looked at him. "And now?" He glanced at the children, curled against each other, warm and safe. "Now I think legacy is what you live through, what you fight for every single day." She reached for his hand again. "You don't have to prove anything anymore, Jihoon," she said. "I'm not trying to prove," he whispered. "I'm just grateful." The frost melted gently, and the city softened under a bloom of cherry blossoms. The neighborhood, once gray and damp, was now brushed with pink and white petals floating like confetti from the heavens. Ra stood on the balcony, a cup of tea in her hands, her eyes tracing the movement of the wind in the trees below. She had never liked spring before, always too full of promises the world rarely kept. But now it felt different. Behind her, laughter echoed from the living room. Jisoo's voice rose in delight as he argued with Minjun about the rules of a board game they'd pulled from under the bed. Haun giggled when one of the pieces fell behind the couch. Jihoon's voice wove through theirs, calm, teasing, present. Ra closed her eyes for a moment. She wasn't waiting anymore for the other shoe to drop. This was their life. Still small, still fragile, but real. A knock came at the door. Jihoon opened it. He spoke with someone in a low voice she couldn't quite make out, and then silence. When she turned, he was holding something in his hands, the thick envelope worn at the edges. "Who was it?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the letter. "Jihoon." He looked up. "It's from my father." Ra blinked. "I thought I haven't spoken to him in almost 10 years, he said quietly. "Since I left you. Since I took the company." The children had gone silent, sensing something shifting in the air. "Are you going to open it?" she asked. He nodded slowly and peeled the envelope open, hands unsteady. Inside was a handwritten letter. His father's script, sharp, deliberate, familiar like a scar you forget until you see it again. He read aloud. "Jihoon, I watched the hearing. I read the headlines. I saw the press conference you gave. And I was ashamed of you, of what our name had become, until I saw what you did next. You gave it all up. For your family. For truth. For love. I never taught you that. I taught you how to win, how to own, how to silence weakness. But I never taught you how to be a man. You learned that on your own. And now, you're the kind of man I always hoped to be but never was brave enough to become. You don't need my blessing, but I'm giving it anyway. Forgive me, son. Come see me if you ever want to talk. Not about business, but about everything we never said. Appa, the room was still. No one breathed. Ra stepped forward and placed her hand on Jihoon's arm. Are you okay? He folded the letter carefully, then exhaled shakily. I didn't know I needed to hear that until just now. Minjun stepped closer. Are you going to go? I think I will, Jihoon said. Not because I need closure, but because maybe we both deserve peace. Haun touched his hand gently. We'll wait for you. No, Jihoon said, voice steady. If I go, I want to take you with me. Jisoo frowned. To meet your dad? He's your grandfather, Jihoon said. Even if he wasn't there, even if he didn't know how to be one. Maybe it's time we stop running from the people we once were. Ra looked at him. You sure you're ready for that? She asked. He turned to her. I wasn't ready for you, for them, for any of this. But I came back, and I stayed. And now, I want to start reaching for the things that scare me instead of hiding from them. She smiled. It was a slow, tender thing. The kind of smile she used to give him long ago, before the world hardened her edges. All right, she said. Then we go together. And so, a week later, they packed a small bag, took the train, rode past mountains and valleys that Jihoon hadn't seen since he was a boy. When they arrived at the small town just beyond the countryside, the sun was beginning to fall. His father's house was quiet. Not grand, not cold, just a single porch light left on, as if someone had been waiting. Jihoon stood at the gate, his family behind him. He took a breath. I think this is what healing looks like, he whispered. Ra squeezed his hand. Then go knock, she said. We'll be right here. He stepped forward. One knock, two. The door opened, and Jihoon finally stepped into a past he no longer feared. His father, Kang Dae-sik, was smaller now, thinner, hair fully gray, shoulders slightly hunched. His eyes sunken but alert. The fire in them hadn't died, but it had softened. They stared at each other in silence. A decade of wounds hung between them, words unsaid, pride left to rot, generations of men who never knew how to speak when it mattered most. And then, slowly, the older man stepped back and opened the door wider. Jihoon walked in. Behind him, Ra waited with the children at the edge of the garden. The house smelled like old paper and wood polish. There was a photo on the wall of Jihoon as a child, standing next to a stern-faced father, neither of them smiling. Dae-sik gestured to the table. You hungry? He asked, voice low, gravelly. Jihoon sat down slowly. Not really. Dae-sik poured 2 cups of tea without asking. They sat. The silence returned, but this time it was patient. Jihoon broke it first. I got your letter. His father nodded. I didn't know if you'd read it. I read it more than once. More silence. Then Dae-sik looked up. I saw what you did, giving up everything. For your kids. Jihoon looked down. They were never a burden. They were the only thing I did right. I raised you to believe that rightness came from control, Dae-sik said quietly. Power. Results. I thought I was teaching you to be strong. You taught me to never be weak, Jihoon said. Even when I was breaking. The older man's hands trembled slightly around his cup. You were always smarter than me. I thought if I could harden you, you'd never get hurt. Jihoon blinked slowly, fighting the wave behind his eyes. Instead, I hurt everyone else, he whispered. Dae-sik reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. It was the article from Jihoon's public confession. I've read this every day since it printed, the old man said. I couldn't stop looking at your face. Not because I was ashamed, because you looked free. Jihoon swallowed hard. I lost everything, Appa. His father looked at him. But you found yourself, he said. That's more than I ever did. There was a long pause. Then Jihoon stood and walked to the window. The children were laughing in the garden now. Jisoo was trying to chase a butterfly while Haun helped Ra pick wildflowers. Minjun sat alone, sketching something in a small notebook. Jihoon's voice cracked. They saved me. Daesik walked over and stood beside him. You were a better father the day you came back than I was in my whole life, he said. You gave them something I never gave you. Jihoon turned, eyes full. What? A chance to heal. They looked at each other. No apologies. No dramatic.